If you grew up in the early to mid 2000s, then you're probably familiar with creepypastas or other forms of internet horror. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then you're likely well adjusted. Today, we're going to dig up the early 2010s internet and take a trip down that dark rabbit hole. Let's start with some of the most influential internet horror sensations and make our way down to the more obscure and forgotten. Slender Man is one of the most recognizable icons of early internet horror, but he didn't begin as a traditional creepypasta. He started as something closer to a meme, created during a Photoshop contest on the Something Awful forums in June of 2009 by a user known as Victor Surge. Those early images, paired with brief, unsettling captions, marked the first appearance of Slender Man's lore. We didn't want to go. We didn't want to kill them. But its persistent silence and outstretched arms horrified and comforted us at the same time. 1983, photographer, unknown, presumed dead. One of two recovered photographs from the Sterling City Library blaze, notable for being taken the day which 14 children vanished and for what is referred to as the Slender Man. Deformities cited as film defects by officials. Fire at library occurred 1 week later. Actual photograph confiscated as evidence. 1986, photographer Mary Thomas, missing since June 13, 1986. Just 10 days later, two users transformed Slender Man into a living narrative by launching an ARG called Marble Hornets. The series became a major catalyst in spreading the Slender Man mythos, eventually growing to 97 entries that remain publicly available on its official YouTube channel. Slender Man didn't reach true mainstream success until a few years later with the release of Slender the 8 Pages. The game exploded in popularity thanks to several large YouTubers who recorded themselves playing it and started a viral trend.
Slender Man, come rescue us! We're trapped!
Following the game's success, Slender Man became a full-fledged internet staple, with constantly evolving lore shaped by an extremely dedicated fan base. Unfortunately, that widespread exposure also blurred the line between fiction and reality for a very small number of people. In May of 2014, that disconnect culminated in a real-world tragedy that permanently changed how Slender Man would be viewed. Two 12-year-old girls in Waukesha, Wisconsin, attempted to sacrifice a classmate after later telling investigators they believed the attack would appease the fictional character. Fortunately, the victim survived, but the incident marked a turning point in public perception. While Slender Man continued to exist online afterward, the character never fully recovered culturally. A later film adaptation was released to terrible reviews, and Slender Man's presence quietly receded, continuing on mostly in the same forums and niche communities where he was originally born, but giving birth to a new genre of fan characters, all related to Slender Man in some way or another. Jeff the Killer may be the most recognizable image in the creepypasta community, not because of the story attached to him, but because of how relentlessly that image spread. The photo commonly associated with Jeff the Killer first appeared on Japanese image boards around 2005, before resurfacing in 2008 on sites like Newgrounds, posted by a user named Killer Jeff, who claimed it was a photo of himself. The image later became linked to a video creepypasta uploaded to YouTube by a user named Cesar. According to Know Your Meme, that video accumulated over 700,000 views before eventually being removed. From there, Jeff the Killer exploded in popularity, spawning hundreds of fan stories and reinterpretations, over 200 entries on the Creepypasta wiki alone, and thousands more across other creepypasta sites. Most of these stories follow the same basic framework. Jeff Woods is portrayed as a quiet, troubled teenager who, after moving to a new town, endures relentless bullying alongside his younger brother. His home life is emotionally distant, and the story frames Jeff as someone gradually losing control as resentment builds. The details vary wildly from version to version, often escalating into increasingly exaggerated scenarios. The story eventually culminates in Jeff's complete psychological break and his transformation into the pale, permanently smiling figure associated with the image. The narrative almost always ends the same way, with Jeff committing violence and delivering the now famous line, "Just go to sleep." Smile Dog, often referred to as Smile.jpg, is believed to have first appeared on 4chan's X board. It originated as a creepypasta paired with a single image, a Polaroid-style photograph of a Siberian husky bearing an unsettling set of human teeth stretched into a wide grin. The image was easy to spread, and the story attached to it is one of the earlier examples of what would become known as cursed media horror. In many ways, it functioned like a digital version of the curse from The Ring, or Ring, where simply viewing the media placed the viewer in danger. The photo became instantly recognizable and circulated widely, shared both as a joke and as part of the story's internal logic. To protect yourself, you had to spread the word. The creepypasta itself follows an amateur writer investigating a mysterious image circulating online called Smile.jpg. Anyone who viewed the image was said to suffer from severe insomnia, recurring nightmares, and hallucinations. These visions often featured the dog from the photograph urging the viewer to share the image. Refusing to do so typically resulted in psychological collapse or death. The story concludes with the author debating whether opening the file could be justified, and if they would have the strength to save themselves by condemning others. And even assuming the Smile.jpg attached to the email was genuine, would I be capricious enough to save myself in that manner? Could I spread the word? Yes. Yes, I could. Sonic.exe marks our entry into the cursed video game niche of creepypasta. Unlike many stories in this category, Sonic.exe managed to break out of its niche in a way few others did, embedding itself into internet culture through fan games, mods, animations, and memes that persist to this day. While the character is undeniably popular, the original story is not remembered for the quality of its writing. It's often viewed as the kind of creepypasta that genuinely scared people when they were younger, but feels awkward or unintentionally funny when revisited later. In fact, the original story was eventually removed from the creepypasta wiki due to quality concerns, a decision that reportedly sparked some drama with its creator. Despite this, the story is still easy to find. Copies remain available on sites like trollpasta.com, alongside countless readings and fan projects on YouTube. The creepypasta follows a Sonic fan named Tom, who receives a mysterious CD-ROM in the mail from a friend. The disc contains a hacked version of Sonic the Hedgehog, complete with a corrupted title screen that included Sega's trademark year altered to 666, Sonic's now pitch-black eyes with glowing red pupils, and the water replaced with the creepypasta trademark hyper-realistic blood. As the story progresses, Tom plays through multiple save files in which Sonic brutally defeats Tails, Knuckles, and Dr. Robotnik, eventually declaring himself a god. The narrative escalates until the boundary between the game and reality begins to collapse. The story ends with Tom hearing a voice behind him. "Try to keep this interesting for me, Tom." I turned around to see where the voice came from, and what I saw made me scream. Sitting on my bed, staring right at me, was a Sonic plushie smiling with bloodstains under its eyes. I can't do it. Ben Drowned is the story that brought ARG-style horror to a much broader audience and inspired countless creators to follow in its footsteps. The story first appeared on 4chan's X board on September 7, 2010, posted by a user named JadUsable, now known to be writer Alex Hall. Rather than presenting it as a fictional story, the post was framed as a genuine request for help, a first-hand account of something deeply wrong. The author wrote entirely in character, responding to comments, answering questions, and gradually releasing new entries over several days. To support his posts, Jad Usable uploaded videos to YouTube, which he claimed were captured directly from his game. These videos showed what appeared to be a modified copy of The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask, complete with impossible glitches, corrupted text, and characters behaving in ways the game was never meant to allow. At the time, the level of effort on display was almost unheard of for a scary story. The videos didn't feel like edits or tricks, they felt like documentation. The narrative itself begins simply. The author purchases a used copy of Majora's Mask at a garage sale, only to be told it once belonged to a boy named Ben, who no longer lived there. What initially feels like a lucky find slowly reveals itself to be something else. The cartridge turns out to be infected by the vengeful spirit of Ben, a boy who, you guessed it, drowned. As the story progresses, Ben begins stalking the author within the game, manipulating save files, appearing unexpectedly, and gradually leaking into other digital spaces. Eventually, it's revealed that Ben has taken control of the author's online presence itself, using YouTube uploads and social media activity to spread his influence as widely as possible. The story has since expanded far beyond its original scope thanks to the ARG elements, but I never kept up with the later entries. What stuck with me was the chilling conclusion of the original run.
Lastly, thank you for taking the time to open this and open yourselves up to me by hearing my story. Despite maybe not believing me, you didn't have to do that. Really, you shouldn't have. Your support this entire time has kept me going, and now I am finally free of this. Thanks again.
Squidward's is a classic example of cursed media horror, one that many people recognize instantly, even if they've never read the full story. Originally posted to 7chan's X board, the creepypasta became infamous for its cover image: Squidward with darkened eye sockets, glowing pupils, and streaks of red running down his face. The story quickly spawned fan animations, parodies, and no shortage of ridicule. It represented the peak of early meme horror, shock-driven stories that relied heavily on disturbing imagery and familiar characters rather than subtlety or depth. While not especially original, it was definitely memorable, largely because it corrupted something widely known and beloved. In later years, the story was rewritten into a more censored version titled Red Mist, named after the fictional episode at the center of the narrative. The version shifted the focus away from explicit gore and shock value towards the unsettling implications of the episode itself. The original creepypasta was interesting because it claimed to be written by a Nickelodeon intern who had seen something they weren't supposed to, something no one was supposed to see. During what was supposed to be a normal episode screening, the episode begins to take a dark turn, with the characters of the show behaving unnaturally towards each other, but mainly towards our protagonist, Squidward. During one of the more memorable scenes, Squidward is performing a clarinet piece in front of a large crowd that includes many of the residents of Bikini Bottom, but the scene ends with the entire crowd, including SpongeBob, booing Squidward until he breaks down into tears, which then prompts them to laugh hysterically. Not only that, but get this, they all have, wait for it, hyper-realistic eyes. The episode quickly devolves into descriptions of spliced-in images that contain extremely awful things that I'm not going to repeat on YouTube, but eventually, the episode culminates with the event spoiled in the title, and the shot lingers on the scene for far too long before the episode finally ends. The Russian sleep experiment was the story that lingered with me long after I first heard it. It stood apart from most creepypastas by presenting itself not as a narrative, but a scientific journal documenting a Soviet-era military experiment. Part of the story's effectiveness lies in how difficult it is to pin down its origins. From what can be traced, it surfaced online around August of 2009, appearing on the RIP474 WordPress blog under the guise of a document received via email. The story itself was posted anonymously, which only strengthened the illusion that it was a leaked or classified report rather than fiction. Even today, one of the most common searches associated with the story is, "Was the Russian sleep experiment real?" which is evidence that its cultural impact carries on to this day. Looking back now, it's easy to see that the premise is somewhat implausible, but the writing is restrained, clinical, and deliberately plain. Combined with a general fear of unethical science and secret government research, the story becomes disturbingly easy to accept, at least for a moment. The experiment itself is described simply. 5 political prisoners are sealed inside a chamber and exposed to an experimental stimulant gas designed to eliminate the need for sleep. The chamber is airtight, so the gas concentration can be controlled, and the prisoners are promised their freedom if they can remain awake for 30 days. Predictably, complete sleep deprivation in total isolation leads to the rapid collapse of the experiment. When researchers finally shut off the gas, the remaining subjects begin begging for it to be turned back on, suggesting something inside of them now depends on it. The story ends with a single subject briefly surviving long enough to deliver a line that, at the time, felt genuinely unsettling.
Have you forgotten so easily? We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread.
No End House is often regarded as one of the higher quality, quintessential creepypastas of its era. If you're familiar with it, there's a good chance you also know it later served as the basis for one season of the horror anthology series Channel Zero. The story is generally traced back to around 2010, when it appeared online, attributed to writer Brian Russell. At the time, there were several other sentient haunted house stories circulating online, but No End House quickly became the most well-known among them. The premise is simple. The narrator receives an instant message from a drug addict college friend. He claims there's a haunted house on the edge of town offering a $500 cash prize to anyone who can make it through all of its rooms. Assuming the tale to be greatly exaggerated by a drug addict's addled mind, he decides to investigate for himself. The challenge begins easy enough, with the early rooms feeling almost playful, but with each new room, the house grows more psychologically aggressive, targeting fear, guilt, and trauma rather than relying on traditional scares. By the time the narrator reaches the 9th and final room, the experience has become deeply disorienting. He pushes through the strain and escapes the house, prize in hand, only to realize the ordeal may not have ended at all. I couldn't stop laughing. I laughed for what seemed like hours. I laughed as I walked out to my car. I laughed as I drove home. I laughed as I pulled into my driveway. I laughed as I opened my front door to my house, and as I saw the small 10 etched into the wood. Candle Cove was a creepypasta told entirely through the medium of online forum posts. First appearing in 2009, it was written by web cartoonist Chris Straub. You may also recognize it because, like No End House, it was later adapted into a season of the anthology horror series Channel Zero. What made Candle Cove particularly effective was its use of the forum format itself. Each entry is written from a different user's perspective, and together those posts form a conversation that slowly pieces itself into a coherent coherent and unsettling story. The premise centers on a children's television show that supposedly aired in the 1970s, but can't be fully remembered by any single person. Throughout the thread, forum members recall scattered details, gradually assembling a clearer picture of what the show may have been. The program was called Cove, and it featured a colorful cast of characters, including a young girl named Janice and an antagonist known as Pirate Percy. As more users join the discussion, additional memories surface, and the details begin to take a darker turn. What initially feels like nostalgic confusion slowly shifts into something deeply uncomfortable. The story ends when one of the posters visits her mother in a nursing home to ask why she was ever allowed to watch something as disturbing as Cove as a child. Her mother's response reframes everything.
I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little, in the early 70s, when I was 8 or 9, and if she remembered a kids show, Cove. She said she was surprised I could remember that, and I asked why. She said,
"Because I used to think it was so strange that you said, 'I'm gonna go watch Cove now, Mom.' And then you would tune the TV to static and just watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had a big imagination with your little pirate show."
Lavender Town Syndrome occupies a strange space in internet horror history. It was less about any one traditional story and more a fast-circulating digital urban legend. Unlike many entries before it, Lavender Town Syndrome wasn't frightening because of the stories, but because of how quickly and convincingly it presented as authentic. The first story began circulating online in the early 2010s and was framed as a hidden tragedy tied to Pokemon Red and Blue. According to the legend, the first version of the Lavender Town theme song caused extreme psychological distress to children, leading to them eventually themselves. Legend also states that Nintendo was aware of the effect and later replaced the song, attempting to cover up their responsibility. At the time, many curious internet users questioned whether the story might be true. Searches asking, "Is Lavender Town Syndrome real?" became common, especially among younger audiences who lacked the context to immediately dismiss it as false. In reality, no evidence of such incidents exists, and the claims have been thoroughly debunked. But that didn't matter in the moment. The fear came from the suggestion that, similar to Cove, something deeply familiar and nostalgic had once been dangerous without anyone realizing it. The Dionaea House is the perfect start to the true and original internet horror stories. Rather than presenting itself as a narrative meant to be read start to finish, the story unfolds through blog posts, emails, and secondhand accounts. These were written and compiled by now somewhat well-known writer Eric Heiserer, who went on to write movies like Arrival and Lights Out. First appearing online in 2004, the Dionaea House opens as an investigation into a series of unexplainable architectural anomalies, mainly houses that appear normal at first glance but subtly violate the rules of physical space. Rooms don't align, measurements are inconsistent, hallways lead to dead ends or locations they shouldn't. The title refers to the Venus flytrap, and the metaphor is intentional. These houses don't simply exist, they lure and trap. Occupants experience disorientation, anxiety, memory loss, and in some cases, complete disappearance. The implication is that the house isn't haunted, but that it is alive, and consumes the victim after luring them there. What makes the Dionaea House especially effective is its seeming disarray. The story is told through multiple different accounts and invites the reader to piece together some form of meaning from the incomplete information. Unlike many creepypastas, the horror here isn't immediate. It builds slowly, emerging from contradictions, omissions, and the growing realization that no one truly understands what's happening, or how widespread it might be. None of the characters are safe, and it's jarring when they make similar mistakes, or when the account is picked up by someone new. The story spread because it felt like something you weren't supposed to be reading at all, something that seemed like a trap. Well, I aim to put a stop to that. I'm gonna tell you what happened, and also what happened to that fella Mark and a slew of other names you may not recognize. The first thing I can tell you is this. They aren't houses. Stop thinking of them like houses. Ted the Caver is often cited as one of the earliest and most influential examples of modern internet horror. In fact, it actually predates the concept of creepypasta, originally being posted in 2001 to a personal website that's purpose was to supposedly document caving adventures. The story itself is framed as a series of journal entries written by a man named Ted, who, along with his friend B, sets off to explore an undiscovered section of cave system. An already horrifying concept, if you ask me. The posts are accompanied by photographs, maps, and updates that give the entire account the feel of a genuine personal log. One of the main things that Ted the Caver has going for it is its realism. The early entries are somewhat uneventful, containing descriptions of equipment, tight passages, and minor injuries. The descriptions come off as authentic, like Ted really is a caver and interested in documenting the things a caver might want to document or read about. As the journal progresses, the cave seems to become increasingly hostile. Passages narrow to the point of barely being passable, the air grows stale, progress becomes dangerous, and retreat becomes uncertain. Ted begins to sense that something deep within the cave doesn't want them there. As the entries continue, Ted begins to become more and more obsessed with the cave, culminating in a terrifying event in a passage aptly named The Tomb. After a narrow escape from something, the story ends with a final message from Ted to the reader stating his intention, his need to return to the cave. There's no clear resolution, no explanation, just an abandoned site, leaving readers to theorize as to what could have happened. Many of you don't agree with my decisions to pursue this cave. I know this from the messages I've received. I'm afraid I don't have a choice. If I'm ever to experience restful slumber, I must return. If I'm ever to walk the halls of my own home in peace, I must return. If I'm ever to exit the overworld and enter the subterranean world of a cave, I must now return. I no longer feel that I have a choice. I must return. Overall, the 2000s to 2010s was a golden age for internet horror. It was a completely new form of storytelling and led to many a memorable tale and sometimes terrifying lasting impact. What horror stories defined you growing up? Did I miss any of the icons or staples? Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you enjoyed this format. Thank you so very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.